In our leadership series, we examined two Bible personalities, Joseph and Judah, and we looked at their resumes. We came to a conclusion that Joseph's resume was very much more impressive than Judah's, and yet, when Jacob was on his deathbed and calls his 12 sons to bless them, he gives the leadership role to Judah, regardless of his poor resume. Let's look at their resumes again and then find out the very reason why Judah was fit for the job and not Joseph. Joseph first. At age 17, he is sold out by 9 of his brothers to a caravan of Arabs and becomes a slave in Egypt. From a slave, he becomes the second in command in Egypt, in the known world. He does not hold a grudge against his brothers. That is a sign of character. He resisted the temptations of Potiphar's wife. That is self-control. He saved the entire world from famine. He's smart, a problem solver. He's a strategist. Joseph is actually called Joseph the Sadiq, Joseph the Righteous. So we see self-control, we see self-discipline, we see character. He doesn't bear any grudges. He's smart, visionary to save Egypt. All the trappings of being a leader. And he's second in command in Egypt. Extensive experience. Let's look at Judah. It was Judah's idea to sell Joseph. He marries a Canaanite woman. This goes against God's command not to marry the locals. He had relations with his daughter-in-law unknowingly, and she gets pregnant. It seems there's nothing to write home about Judah. And yet he gets the job. So what was it? What did Jacob know about leadership, which makes him choose Judah? The word is responsibility. You see, the role of a king is to assume responsibility for the welfare of his subjects. The honor of the royal line was conferred upon Judah because of 3 incidents he stood out in and took responsibility. Let's look at all 3, and I will hang my hat on the 3rd. Number 1, Judah showed responsibility during the sale of Joseph. Number 2, for not letting Tamar fall prey to the accusations leveled against her. And number 3, which I want to hang my hat on, was when Joseph asked that Benjamin be brought to him in Egypt. Genesis 42. And it came to pass that they were emptying their sacks, and behold, each one's bundle of money was in his sack. They saw the bundles of their money, they and their father, and they became frightened. And their father Jacob said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is gone, and Simeon is gone. And you want to take Benjamin? All these troubles have come upon me." Let's pay very close attention to Reuben, the oldest son's solution to this problem. And Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "You may put my 2 sons to death if I don't bring him," that is Benjamin, "to you. Put him into my hands, and I'll return him to you." You see how serious I am, according to Reuben. Put Benjamin in my hands. If I don't bring him back, you can kill my 2 children. This is a very irresponsible statement. Are they your children and not his as well? They are his grandchildren. What do you mean kill them? You will compensate me by allowing me to kill my own grandchildren? What kind of proposition is this? A person with such judgment or sense of priorities, I can't trust him. I don't want my son to go with him. So Jacob refused Reuben. Genesis 43. But the hunger was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they finished eating the grain that they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little food." But Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man warned us repeatedly, saying, 'You shall not see my face if your brother is not with you.'" Why is Judah speaking here? Well, Reuben says something foolish and irresponsible. And Jacob said, I am not sending Benjamin with you. Simon is next in line when it comes to leadership, but he's in prison in Egypt. Levi is next, but Judah speaks over him because he can relate to his father. He, Judah, has also lost 2 sons, and his father has lost 2 sons also, Joseph and Simeon. And they are asking to take a 3rd one. And Judah said to Israel his father, "Send the lad with me, and we will get up and go, and we will live and not die, both me and you and also our young children. I will guarantee him. From my hand you can demand him. If I do not bring him to you and stand him up before me, I will have sinned against you forever. For had we not tarried, by now we would have already returned twice." Listen to Judah. I am taking responsibility and putting my honor and life on the line. Failure means that I have sinned against you. This is a statement of nobility. Watch. When Judah came to Egypt with Benjamin and Joseph wanted to keep him behind, this was his response. "For your servant assumed responsibility for the boy from my father, saying, if I do not bring him to you, I will have sinned against my father forever. So now, please let your servant stay instead of the boy as a slave to my Lord, and may the boy go up with his brothers." Judah refused to leave one behind. Some years back, they left one behind. That was Joseph. This time he says, "No, I am not leaving one behind." Joseph could not hold back his tears. He has seen the maturity in his brother Jehudah, and he reveals himself to them. Thus, all 3 cases proved Judah to be more worthy of the kingship, since the role of a king is to assume responsibility for the welfare of his subjects. Now we can understand Jacob's choice for leadership and his blessing for Judah. "Judah, as for you, your brothers will acknowledge you. Your hand will be at the nape of your enemies, and your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. A cub and a grown lion is Judah. He was a cub when he left one behind, but when he grew up into a lion, he refused, and he took responsibility and said, 'Not this time. I am not leaving anyone behind.' From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him?" Leadership is not being righteous or perfect like Joseph, having a very impressive resume. It's rather taking responsibility like Judah. Look at those that we call authentic leaders, and you will see this consistent occurrence of responsibility, taking responsibility. Nelson Mandela, may he rest in peace, could have become a free man 5 years earlier before his release in 1990. The reason he did not is because the offer made to him by the state president of South Africa was conditional. The conditions basically required Mandela to retire in silence, abandon everything he had stood up for, and go against his responsibilities to his people. Mandela once said, "In prison, you come face to face with time. There is nothing more terrifying. And yet, to learn that he refused release after 22 years of incarceration, despite the terror of it, is more proof of Mandela's unwavering pursuit of justice. A man who had a sense of responsibility." That is what leadership is about. And Judah stood out, so he gets the job.